Today, we're going to talk about one of the most controversial spiritual figures of the last century, a man first known as Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, and who the world now knows as Osho. His story is just a wild ride, taking us from India to the American countryside and back again, through utopian dreams, some really shocking crimes, and a legacy that you might be surprised to hear is more powerful today than ever before.
So this was his core message, his first commandment, and it totally captures the kind of radical, think-for-yourself idea that made him such a phenomenon. You have to remember, this was a time when a lot of people, especially in the West, were pretty fed up with traditional religion and authority. So this message, it was absolutely electric. It was basically a call to find truth inside yourself, and it set the stage for a massive global following, and, well, a massive conflict with just about everyone else.
But before we get into all the conflict, let's just take a look at where his legacy is right now. Because, honestly, you're probably more familiar with his work than you think, even if the whole controversial story behind the name Osho is new to you.
Yeah, so far from just fading away, his influence has basically exploded since he died back in 1990. So he did something really clever. He mixed Eastern mysticism with Western psychology, and he told people you didn't have to give up all your worldly possessions to be spiritual. And that combination, that cocktail of ideas, has just soaked into modern wellness culture. It makes his whole story incredibly relevant right now.
I mean, the scale of his brand today is just staggering. We're talking over 650 books, a huge meditation resort in India that people fly to from all over the world. His foundation even runs stress management seminars for giant corporations. But he is still an incredibly divisive figure. So how on earth did this global brand come out of such a notorious past? Okay, let's get into it.
All right, so the biggest, most pivotal chapter of this whole saga starts in 1981, when he makes this incredibly bold move to the United States. And the goal wasn't just to, start a little community. No, the plan was to build an entire city from scratch, a spiritual utopia, right in the middle of nowhere. It all started with this gigantic piece of land, the Big Muddy Ranch in rural Oregon. And just think about that for a second. 64,000 acres. They bought it for almost $6 million. And this was back in the early 80s. This was an operation with very, very deep pockets and even bigger plans.
And the speed they built this place was just unbelievable. In about a year, they had legally incorporated it as a city, Rajneeshpuram. By 1983, it was a real, functioning city. It had its own airport, its own power grid, homes for thousands of people. But, as you can imagine, this sudden boom created huge friction with the small, conservative towns nearby. And by 1984, that friction was about to catch fire.
And if you want one thing, one number, that symbolizes the growing divide between this commune and its neighbors, or just the mind-blowing wealth of its leader, it's this, 93. That's how many Rolls Royces his followers bought for him. As you can imagine, as tensions in the area grew, this car collection became this massive symbol of everything his critics couldn't stand.
So that dream of a peaceful utopia? Yeah, it was starting to crumble, fast. Facing all this legal and political pressure, the commune's leadership, led by Rajneesh's incredibly powerful personal secretary, Ma Anand Sheela, turned to crime. To full-on criminal conspiracy, all in an effort to hold on to power and protect their city. And what happened next is it's jaw-dropping. The leadership started wiretapping phones everywhere. They hatched a plot to assassinate a U.S. attorney. They even tried to murder Rajneesh's own doctor. And then, most infamously, they deliberately unleashed a mass food poisoning on the local population. And listen, this wasn't some small thing. They went to local restaurants and secretly contaminated the salad bars with salmonella bacteria. They sickened over 750 people. And why? Their goal was to make so many local voters sick that they couldn't vote, allowing the Rajneeshis to win a county election. To this day, it is still the largest bioterror attack in American history. So this brings us to the million-dollar question. Who was really responsible for all this? Well, Ma Anand Sheela was convicted for her role and she went to prison. Later, she would claim that Rajneesh knew all about it, that he was complicit. But Rajneesh, who had been observing a period of public silence for years, claimed he had no idea what was going on. He only broke his silence to call Sheela and her inner circle a gang of fascists and told law enforcement to come investigate. In the end, he was never charged with any of those specific crimes. So while he dodged the charges for the bioterror attack and everything else, the massive criminal investigation put his own immigration status under a microscope, and that's what ultimately brought Rajneeshpuram crashing down.
So in October of '85, federal agents tracked him down to a Learjet in North Carolina. They believed he was trying to flee to Bermuda to escape prosecution. But here's the twist. The charges they arrested him on weren't for murder or bioterrorism. They were for immigration fraud, basically for arranging sham marriages so his foreign followers could stay in the country.
Now, to get out of this mess, he used a really fascinating and pretty rare legal strategy. Instead of going to trial, he entered something called an Alford plea. It's a strange kind of guilty plea where you still maintain you're innocent, but you admit that, yeah, the prosecution probably has enough evidence to convict you anyway. It's a way to end the whole thing without ever actually admitting you did it.
So the final chapter in America wrapped up pretty quick. He was indicted, he got arrested, and he took that Alford plea. The result? A huge fine, a suspended sentence, and a deal. He had to leave the United States immediately and not come back. Just like that, the American experiment was over.
But the story doesn't end there. After being deported, Rajneesh basically became a spiritual nomad, looking for a new country to call home. But his notoriety, his reputation, it followed him everywhere. And that led his final, and of course equally controversial chapter, right back where he started.
Get this, 21 different countries refused to let him in. He eventually had no choice but to go back to his original ashram in Pune, India. And it was there he made one last incredible claim, that his bad health was because US authorities had slowly poisoned him with a heavy metal called thallium while he was in jail. Then, in 1989, right before he died, he dropped the name Rajneesh and officially became known only as Osho.
And his epitaph, which he wrote himself, is it's the perfect final statement. It completely captures that transcendent, provocative, almost untouchable image he built for himself his whole life. It kind of sidesteps the basic facts of life and death, just like he so often tried to sidestep the rules of society.
And so that's what we're left with. This is the central question that still hangs over his entire legacy. Was he a true, enlightened, spiritual teacher who was maybe the victim of his ambitious followers? Or was he a brilliant, charismatic cult leader who was secretly pulling all the strings of a criminal enterprise? Decades later, the world still can't seem to make up its mind.